Good afternoon and welcome. Those are the normal sound effects when I make an introduction. I am Ben Ayers, Dean of the Terry College of Business, and on behalf of the Terry College, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Mason Public Leadership Lecture with Alana Shepherd. We have the great fortune today of having one of our state's true leaders with us, and following her remarks, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions about her life, her work, as well as the values that form their foundation. At this time, I'd like to invite University of Georgia President Jerry Moorhead to the podium for some words of welcome.
Thank you, Dean Ayers, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the University of Georgia, it is truly a pleasure to welcome all of you here today and to express our delight in having some students still arriving from the bad weather outside, in having Alana Shepherd with us here today. The university was pleased to recognize the Shepherd family with honorary degrees in 2011 for their many contributions, not only to this university, but to this state, this nation, and literally to this world. I think all of you in this audience know how rare it is for the University of Georgia to bestow honorary degrees. You will hear more about her life and achievements in just a moment when she is introduced. But I want to talk a little bit about today's lecture and it being a part of the Terry Leadership Speaker Series, which brings a number of distinguished leaders to the University of Georgia campus, some representing the private sector, some representing the public sector. All of these speakers have inspired our students and indeed our entire university community. We are so fortunate to have the namesake of the Mason Public Leadership Lecture here with us this afternoon. Keith Mason is a loyal and devoted University of Georgia alumnus who served as a trustee of the University of Georgia Foundation for more than 10 years. And during that period of time, as well as before and since that time, Keith has given of his talents and his service and his resources to make the University of Georgia a better place. This lecture series reflects one of Keith's passions and an important component of the University of Georgia experience, public leadership. He shares our belief that this university, the birthplace of public higher education in America, should be and is producing leaders for the state, the nation, and the world. So we are so indebted to Keith and his wife Twinker for their generosity in supporting this lecture series, as well as the many other things that they do for the University of Georgia. We're sorry that Twinker couldn't be with us today, but we're glad that Keith could be here, and I ask all of you to join me in thanking the Masons for their contributions. Following the conclusion of today's discussion, Keith will offer some closing remarks. So at this time, I would like to introduce one of our outstanding students at the University of Georgia, Lindsay Berman, who will be introducing our guest speaker. Lindsay is an honor student who is double majoring in biology and psychology with a concentration in neuroscience and a minor in Spanish. That covers quite a number of areas. She's also, by the way, pursuing a certificate in personal and organizational leadership as well. She has served in a number of volunteer leadership positions on campus as well as off campus, and they include Development Director for UGA Relay for Life, a student organization that has raised more than $3 million for the American Cancer Society. As an undergraduate researcher, Lindsay also has assisted UGA faculty in the College of Pharmacy in the search for cancer-fighting drugs. Please join me in welcoming Lindsay to the podium to introduce our esteemed speaker. Lindsay?
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Mason Public Leadership Lecture Series. My name is Lindsay Berman, and I am a Leadership Fellow through the Institute of Leadership Advancement, studying biology and psychology. The Mason Public Leadership Lecture features prominent business leaders who have contributed significantly to their communities or have spent time in a public service role. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing Mrs. Alana Shepherd. She and her husband, Harold, founded the Shepherd Center in Atlanta in 1975 to treat spinal cord injury after their son, James, sustained a paralyzing spinal cord injury. Frustrated by the lack of state-of-the-art rehabilitation care in the Southeast, the Shepherds galvanized support to open the special facility, which has grown from a 6-bed unit into a world-renowned 152-bed not-for-profit hospital specializing in medical treatment, research, and rehabilitation for patients with brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and other neurological conditions. The center now treats over 8,000 patients each year from across the nation and the globe. Mrs. Shepherd has also served as an advocate for accessibility after recognizing that many patients would return to communities ill-equipped to support them. Fighting for improvements that would allow patients to resume their lives and feel accepted, Mrs. Shepherd's advocacy has resulted in the addition of lifts to the MARTA bus system and the conversion of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport into one of the country's most accessible. Mrs. Shepherd changed Olympic and Paralympic history when she fought to bring the International Paralympic Games to Atlanta in 1996. Her efforts led to the International Olympic Committee's decree that all cities seeking to be the site of future Olympic Games must include plans and proposed financing for the Paralympics, as well as equal access to the same sites and facilities for Paralympic athletes. In 2011, Mrs. Shepherd, her husband Harold, and her son James Shepherd were awarded honorary degrees by the University of Georgia for their contributions to healthcare and to the state of Georgia. Among her many other accolades, Mrs. Shepherd received the 2012 J.W. Fanning Award and the Georgia Hospital Association's 2009 Lifetime Heroic Achievement Award. These special distinctions hardly do justice to her profound contributions to healthcare and advocacy in our community. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Alana Shepherd.
Very nice. I appreciate it. Oh, good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. And to President Morehouse, Dean Ayers, Keith Mason, my good friend. I'm going to put that out of my way. Am I doing okay now? Yeah, my mic works. Thank you for being here with me today. And I also have a lot of friends in the audience. Some are family members of patients that we've had. And we've had a lot of things happen up here at Georgia that have needed Shepherd as a treatment plan, and we're so sorry that it happened. And I just urge all of you as you walk and bike through the community to be careful that you don't get hit by a car, because we've had several who have done that, and it's frightening for sure. I'd like to show a video first, just a few minutes, so that you have some idea of Shepherd without me trying to tell you.
It was an early morning in Rio de Janeiro on the beach, about 10 o'clock, and my two friends and I went out on the beach, and we're laying out in the sun, and I got hot, and I said, does anyone else want to go catch a wave? And no one else wanted to go in, and the third wave I caught was about 10 or 12 feet high. It collapsed into 3 feet of water. can still vividly remember hitting the bottom and knowing I'd been stunned and hit the bottom and tried to push off the bottom and couldn't push off. And then the next wave went over and I couldn't kick off the bottom. And at that point, the fear set in of, I'm going to drown.
It was morning, and it was at 10 o'clock, and I was in the basement sanding on a brass bowl that we're going to use in a fireplace and put rocks in and have a fire there. And for some reason, Alana was still there, and so when I got this boy's message, I said, Alana, get on the phone. I was down in the basement, and I hollered up the steps to her. And, it's like, it's that call that you never want to get. You just never want to get it. And I can walk down the halls here, and I can tell you a new parent. I mean, I can see them. I've been there. I look the same way.
You know, it was the call that every family remembers who's ever had some family member injured. It's the call from hell. Injury happened October 21st, and December the 6th, we arrived at Piedmont.
And they had already put together a team of doctors, from a group of orthopedic surgeons to a pulmonologist, a thoracic surgeon, neurologist. So they wanted to treat it as a team because they knew how complicated it had gotten. And we thought if we got back to Piedmont and our family and our doctors, everything would be fine. And it was sort of fine. It was a pretty rocky road. I spent a few more weeks in ICU and had some respiratory arrest, cardiac failure. So it was a pretty rocky landing even coming back home.
There was a lot of doubt about whether he would live or not, as you can imagine. So we heard about the hospital in Denver, and Harold went out there and looked at it and came back that same day and said, this is so different. It's really what they call spinal care. And so he said, let's get out of here. And they said, oh, no, you can't possibly leave. No. It'll be six or 7 months. We need to build him up with blood transfusions and all this sort of thing. We said, no, we're going. And then they began to come around one by one to us and say, you're really making the right decision.
And it was just like you flipped a light switch. It was night and day.
He began to move a toe and then a finger or so. And when we got out there, he was coming off his ventilator, and they began to pull all the tubes and get you knowing that there's some hope, and a lot of intense physical therapy and so forth. So lucky that he was an incomplete injury, so he got return of function and sensation, particularly on one side. And he was able to walk out with a leg brace and a crutch. Well, that was a great day.
Everybody said, there should be something like Craig in the Southeast.
He said, oh, somebody ought to start something. And somebody ought to start something. Somehow that somebody became us.
Partner of mine who was a friend of the Shepherds knew they were looking for a medical director for something they wanted to start. And he gave them my name, and they called me up and said, would you be willing to consider starting a rehab center? And I knew it would go right from the start because there was nothing available within a short airplane or long airplane ride from Atlanta.
We had begged every friend we knew and some that we didn't know too well for money to buy into this dream, and no one in Atlanta really understood what we were trying to do. So it was like, would you make a contribution, see if we can pull this thing off. And we started with 6 beds in August of 1975.
It became obvious so quickly that they didn't have the facility to cover all the patients' needs.
It was so wonderful to go in where everything was brand spanking new. The rooms were fully accessible, the facility was fully accessible, and we had a staff that knew how to take care of patients with spinal cord injury in an expert way. So just having your own home was worth it all.
And what's wonderful about this Shepherd is it's not like a hospital. It's not depressing. Everyone has a smile on their face. It's really, like they say, like a big family.
almost every day somebody stops you in the hall or the elevator and said, "Thank you for starting this place." Well, you know, I'm not the only one that started it. There were 4 of us in the beginning, and then lots more people were part of it. I couldn't do anything better with my life.
It's been 40 years. We've had a few bumps in the road, but you're going to do that if you do anything that's worthwhile.
I think one of the things that's most important to me is touching the people that come through the doors here and watching them leave with a smile on their face and hugging staff and saying how grateful they were to have been someplace during one of the most horrible times in their life. And they're ready to re-engage. It's just, it's moving every day.
You know, I've been very fortunate that some leadership opportunities have just kind of dropped on me. I didn't really go out to do any of this sort of thing. And so I just wanted to tell you a few things that may help you as you think about becoming or being a better leader and more engaged than you are right now. You won't need to wait till you're 30 or 40 to use these 3 messages that I have for you. They will still work then too. But what I say today will apply to your life tomorrow or anytime. First, I want you to enrich yourself, give yourself, volunteer. Making volunteering an integral part of your life like working, sleeping, and breathing. Often we hear people speak of volunteering in terms of giving back, and truly all of us have that obligation to our communities. But I hope you will understand that first and foremost, through volunteering, you give to yourself. The excitement of new people, ideas, and challenges, and the joy of knowing that something good and significant has taken place in part through your efforts that only enhances your personal growth. If you are like society as a whole, there are some of you who've done a lot, and many others of you think that you've always meant to do it more than you do. And it's time to turn those good intentions into action and make volunteering a lifetime practice. I know that in your applications now for college, one of the things is, what have you done in your community? They didn't used to do that, and it's so important. And so people are building a resume, maybe just to get into college, but they're doing good at the same time. Perhaps you're not sure what you want to commit your time to and your energy. But don't let that stop you. Just follow your interest and your convictions. Even at your young age, you're not going to lack any opportunities. Many colleges these days, and I know University of Georgia does this, encourages you to get involved in the community, especially with local schools and children. You'll find campus organizations that offer interesting volunteer opportunities. You might turn to religious institutions, Boys and Girls Clubs, children's shelters, animal rescue, or any number of any worthy groups that couldn't open their doors or turn on the lights without the devotion of volunteers. But how do you get started, you might ask? When somebody asks who will do this, put your hand up. There's no worthwhile task that's beneath any of us, whether it's stuffing envelopes or making Kool-Aid for a T-ball team. Don't wait to be a parent to coach soccer or work with a tennis clinic or keep score for your church league basketball. Do it now. At the same time, know how capable you really are. When you get involved with a nonprofit, you can be sure that leadership opportunities will come your way. Step up to the ones that match your skills and that give you a chance to grow new skills. Organize the fundraiser, rewrite the bylaws, run the membership campaign or help, serve on the board, not just as a name, but as a working, doing director. If you've ever heard yourself saying, "Sorry, I'm too busy with schoolwork," or so whatever you're doing, stop and take stock of yourself. How we use time is nothing less than a mirror of our deepest and dearest priorities. And that's a mirror we all need to look into at a regular basis. My second message might sound at first like it's mainly for female members of your class, but it's really for everybody. To you young women, I urge you to take charge of your own lives and your destinies. Whether you pursue a career, concentrate on a family, or attempt to do both, be in command of your own affairs. Be prepared to support yourself. If Prince Charming comes along, that's fine, but you're responsible for yourself. Don't give in to the glass ceiling, external expectations, or other forces outside yourself. Be true to your own sense of what's right for you. Forge ahead toward your own goals, not stridently, but with a gracious, determined competence that goes much further than shrillness or belligerence ever will. And to you young men, give a hand to your sisters and your female friends and classmates in their ambition to reach the same level of achievement and contribution that you strive to do. It's just the right thing to do. Remember, the more open and encouraging you are toward others, the more ability and talent you'll discover within yourself. If you're leaving Georgia, as I left school, not at the very academic top of the class, I made it out though, you can still emerge as a leader in your own time and in your own way. You know, so many years ago, nobody would have picked Bill Gates out of a crowd to be the next great pioneer of American business. He was a dropout, and I knew somebody who was friends with his parents, and they called him up and they said, oh, we're devastated, Trey's dropped out of Harvard. Well, big deal. It was to them at the time, but look where he went. And I think he is an example of a servant leader. He has quietly gone about doing some good things, some wonderful, fabulous things, without being over impressed with himself, or it doesn't seem that way to me at least. I think he's a good example of a servant leader. Every one of you has a contribution to make, regardless of your GPA, your SAT scores, class distinctions, or any other factor. All of us can make a meaningful and positive mark if we're steadfast in pursuing our goal. And this leads me to a third message, which probably comes from my background of the Shepherd Center. This, too, is the truth for all ages. Be kind and caring to each other. In fact, even when it's not easy or comfortable. Let me be more precise about what I mean. There are going to be times in your life when someone goes through a tragedy, maybe a death in the family, a crippling accident or brain injury, or some other desperate situation. It seems awful, and it is awful. You're pulled between the feeling that you ought to do something and the fear that you won't know what to say. Or you might even make a fool of yourself. Well, don't stay away because you want to remember them as they were before this happened. Don't say, I just can't handle this, or I'm not a good hospital visitor. What if you were the patient? A soft touch on the cheek or the arm or the shoulder and say, I stopped by to say hello. That'll do wonders. Nobody expects you to come with pearls of wisdom. Just bring your compassion. You don't have to stay for hours. Just a few minutes will do. And you don't have to come every day, just often enough to keep in touch, even if it's a note that you slip under the door. When you've done something to touch a friend's life, you'll have the most amazing mix of feeling. You feel important and insignificant at the same time, even if you hardly said a word. There's power in your presence. You have no idea how much. In fact, you'll leave this school with more power than you can possibly imagine. You have the power to do good in so many ways. I think back about, as I said, the leadership opportunities that just kind of dropped on me. After we were married, my husband was building a road way off on the coast of North Carolina. And I'd never lived in a community where I didn't know one soul. When you go in the grocery store, you see no faces, you know nobody walking down the street, nobody in the library. You don't know anyone. And he was working about 16 hours a day, and man, was I miserable. So I drove around one day and found the biggest house in this little town. And I went up and knocked on the door, and this woman came to the door, and I said, do you know anyone who's looking for an assistant Girl Scout leader? Man, was I in. They grabbed me so fast because people do take on the responsibility to be a Girl Scout leader, but they want more help. So immediately I had 10 friends who I could speak to if I saw them in the grocery store. And it made a great difference in my life. And I don't know what it did for them except give them a few more hours if they didn't have to be the leader. And I enjoyed it no end. So volunteer at your children's schools when you get to the point where you have children, and for their teams, and for all those things they do. And I wanted to touch a little bit on the Paralympic Board and my efforts there. This was interesting. We found out that the Olympics were coming to Atlanta, but the Paralympics weren't. They were probably going to England, and we thought this was terrible. So Shepherd Center stepped up and became the lead sponsor for the Paralympic Games. We put a bid team together, went to Tignes, France to bid, and actually we were the only bidder, because when the other countries in the world realized that Atlanta was bidding, and that's where it should have been, they just stepped aside. So that's how that first came about. And we had to go back to Lucerne every now and then to pay our homage to the great Samaranch. That's a story I'm sure you've heard from other people too. But anyway, one of the meetings, I realized that during the Olympic Games, they have a 3-week moratorium, a call for it, for all wars to cease. Well, of course, you know they don't, but maybe they do in some countries and some places. In that 3 weeks, there's peace. And so I asked his aide, I said, can I ask him about making that same proclamation for the Paralympic Games? And he said, wait till after lunch and I'll get your answer. So when we came back into the meeting room, he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, you're not to ask that question. I thought, my gosh, what would it have hurt him to make that? I never could understand it, but it just shows you his character. He thought he was a dictator. And I guess he was, because he never declared that. And then when the games went on in Barcelona, I was sitting in one of the venues, and he came in and, of all things, came all the way across the row and sat down beside me. Well, that was his error, because he was not very smart that day. So I turned to him and I said, you know, it would make so much sense for one committee to put on the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games and not duplicate an effort. It would save money. It would put a star in their cap. And he said, you're right, I'm going to make it happen. And he did. So after Atlanta, the same organizing committee has to do both games. And man, I thought that was super. So after some fundraising campaigns for Shepherd, raising money to build their facilities, you know, I'd been working with a lot of the businessmen and women in the community. And at that time, there was a big push to have women on boards of directors, which there were none anyplace. It was just the men. And so one of the bank presidents had been on my committee, and he came to me and asked me if I would join the bank board. I didn't know anything about banking, and except that, you know, I wrote my checks and paid my bills. And so I was thrilled, though, because I'd always wanted to be on a board like that. I said, sure. And I knew I was a token woman. It didn't make any difference. I had to be there because they wanted a woman board member, a woman as a board member. And I listened. I never missed a meeting. I went to all the committee work that should be done. And I was, you know, I think there were a couple of men who didn't know much more than I did that were on that board. And then the Genuine Parts president came to me and asked me if, first, the sky didn't fall when I went on that board as the first woman. So then Genuine Parts had pressure coming from a bunch of Dominican nuns in Wisconsin. They said, they didn't own a whole big thing of stock, but they owned some, and they said, we want to see a woman on your board. And so Larry Prince came to me and said, would you join this board? Well, I did know something about Genuine Parts because my husband's business was building roads, and they had bought parts from them since the beginning of both companies. So I joined that as the first woman, and again, the sky didn't fall. And now they have 3 or 4 women on their board, and this is something that all the boards do now. In fact, they're rated every year, as you probably have seen in a publication, how many women are on this board of this company. So I wasn't so much the token by then. And then the Buckhead Coalition asked me to join as the first woman, and I said, okay, I'd love that. And then I was the first woman chairman. And Charlie Loudermilk, who started Aaron Rents, went to Sam Massell, the ex-mayor, and the head of the Buckhead Coalition, and he said, she's going to ruin your life. You're crazy to have put her on this board. So, of course, Sam told me what he said. But it didn't matter. I didn't say anything. And I really turned out to be one of their good chairmen, if I say so myself. Leadership is interesting. I think it's important that they have humility. Truett Cathy is one of the examples of servant leadership. I know a man who rode on the same plane with him. It wasn't a private plane, it was a regular Delta flight. And when they got to their destination, Truett was then nearly 80 years old, and there was a pregnant woman trying to get her bag off the carousel. Truett stepped up, took her bag, pulled it off himself, and put it on a dolly. Never said another word. She didn't have any idea who he was, but my friend was standing there watching that. And that, to me, is an example of leadership, servant leadership. Bill Gates, of course, is another one that, as I've already spoken about. So if leaders lose humility, there's always the chance that someone's going to burst their bubble. And there's the story, which I assume is true, of Muhammad Ali on a commercial flight one time. This was in his glory days when he was at the top of his career. And the flight attendant came by and said, "Please fasten your seatbelt." And he said, "Superman don't need no seatbelt." And she came right back at him and she said, "Superman don't need no airplane either." So, all right, I'll be glad to answer questions. And are you going to monitor for me or whatever?
So we have some time for questions and answer. There is a microphone, and so if you'll raise your hand and wait for the mic, then we'll take your question at that time. So first question's right here.
You're a very inspiring woman, and what would you say that your personal leadership skills are as a woman in the healthcare industry?
Ooh. Well, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a professional healthcare leader at all. I mean, I have no professional degrees, but I do the tours for people coming to the hospital, and if medical people are coming here from other states or other parts of the city, the doctors say, "Go ahead, you do it, because you know more about spinal care and brain injury than they do." And if I get to a question that I shouldn't be answering, maybe I think I could answer it, but I don't think it's appropriate, then I find a doctor or something there that can answer the question. But I think that's a way I've been effective. All right, I gave you all some questions at lunch in case this happened.
All right, what fascinates you about what you're doing right now, especially as technology increases in the biomedical kind of engineering field, or just things that are going on right now in the Shepherd Center that really
Well, we have about 80 research projects going on, some of them very important, some of them not so important, but they have to be done. And it's about half and half maybe. But one of the most exciting ones is the stem cell injections directly into the spinal cord. And it started out, there are probably only 5 places in the country that are in this program, in this research department. The FDA is very closely monitoring it, of course, and the criteria for having it, it's great. There are probably 40 questions, everything from, have you had a fever? Do you have diabetes? Do you have addictions? Would you agree not to have a child for the first 12 months after this injection? And they have to be within 2 weeks of injury, and just a whole bunch of questions like that. But each time we have done it, we've done, I think, 11 patients, and the most of anybody in the country. And the dosage has increased the number of units of stem cell. And this is an embryonic stem cell line that was approved by George Bush in California maybe 14 years ago. They've been growing in Petri dishes ever since, these cells. And the last 2 were a big dose, maybe 20,000 cells, where the first started out at 6. And they were both of those patients that were injected were high quads. And before that, it had only been people who were paralyzed from, say, about mid-chest down. Because if something had gone wrong, they would have lost much more movement and so forth. But these 2 guys got a massive dose, And within just a couple of days, they got 2 degrees of return of function, which if you break your neck, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and of course 1 being the worst, and they were probably C5s or 4s, and they got 2 degrees of return of function, which meant a grip perhaps or a pinch. That's big. So now the trials have been called off while they evaluate them, and we hope when they start again that we will be able to give even larger doses, because that's really exciting. I mean, nobody's going to jump up and walk around or run, but to have that much function improvement is so vital. If you can't do a pinch, or you can't really move your fingers, or you don't have a wrist, your options are limited for doing the things that all of us want to do. And then the bionic braces were very interesting too, because this is a project between Vanderbilt and Shepherd, and their bioengineering department had invented these braces that the patient who can't even walk but can sit up, puts on a little battery pack and puts on the braces, takes his sticks, stands up, leans forward, and begins to walk. It's dramatic. When they're doing that at Shepherd, which is about every 3 weeks, we have about 20 people using them, former patients and sometimes an inpatient. Everyone keeps them in their eyesight as long as they're crossing their view. I mean, they know that someday this might be a possibility for them. It's really dramatic and so exciting. So those are most rewarding. All right, you were...
Yeah.
Yes.
So during lunch, one of the things that you asked me to go ahead and make sure that you talked about was the patient at the Shepherd Center from Singapore. You said it was a very interesting story. Beijing.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your story about that.
Monday, that's okay. This patient came in last week. He is from Beijing, obviously a fairly affluent family, speaks Mandarin, and he is a SCAD exchange student in Savannah in industrial design. He was in a terrible wreck, and he's a high quad today on a ventilator. He'll come off his ventilator, and he did start moving something yesterday, a little bit of arm motion. Oh, thank goodness. Well, there's his father, who speaks only Mandarin and had a translator. And he grabbed me Monday in the hall, and he said, "This is my only son. This is my only child. I don't care how he recovers. He can't die." And, this gets pretty emotional. He was emotional, and I can't help but be a little bit. And I said, "He's not going to die." And he said, "You must tell the staff up there, they can't let him die. They can't let him die." He kept on. And I said, "I will go tell him, but you must not feel this way. He's going to be better. Just give it a little bit of time." So I went up and told the staff in ICU, and when I went back later that afternoon, they said, "We have assured him that his son is not going to die unless something unusual happens," which they didn't talk about. But, you can never say everything will always be all right, that you're not going to get an infection or you're not going to have something, throw a clot or something. But the outlook is so much better than the father scared me to death. Well, also, he was speaking by then in broken English. And the staff up there said, "Well, this just started. We've never heard him say anything. We understood he didn't speak English, only Mandarin." And his English wasn't good at all, but just to go through that, it kind of wrings you out emotionally, as you might imagine. And the staff said they all went in, 3 or 4 doctors went in and talked to the father through the interpreter, trying to assure him that things were going to be better. And so they thought he had gotten a little calmed down. His wife is here also. I haven't met her. But, things like that happen every day. It's amazing. And as some of the families who are here today know, I have spoken to them when their patient was in the hospital, and I know what they were feeling. I've been there, as Harold said in that video. I've been there, and I know what they're going through. And just to carry on a conversation, assure them that, time is going to make things in your favor. It's going to get better. So that's been very rewarding. And the staff will sometimes say, "Please come in here and speak to this family. They're falling apart." Or come in here and meet them. They're so interesting, and they think this is such a good place. So I do a lot of that. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for both men and women here who want to pursue a career and just living a balanced lifestyle with career, family, service, and then also specifically for women balancing career and family and service?
Well, that's probably really hard, depending on how many children you might have or how many relatives you might have. It's important to keep a balance for sure, but I think giving back, and that's that trite expression, in your community will make you feel that you have done something to help somebody else, and it really is a good feeling. None of us need to go along and selfishly use our time. You can find a way to make a difference, even if it's something little. And as you do that, the leadership opportunities are going to come along. And they may not be making you the president of a bank or the head of a clinic or head of a firm, but you certainly will be an important member of your community. And I think will give you a grand feeling. So I think it's sometimes hard to balance, and you don't always do it. You don't always succeed in balancing every week, but getting your rest and making sure that you get things done that should be done, even if they have to be put off till the next week, is important too.
Hi, Ms. Shepherd. Thank you for coming today. You truly have an amazing story. One thing I wanted to ask is, leaders gain a lot of knowledge from books and pieces of literature. Are there any books that you found especially compelling in your career?
Well, I have taught some Bible study groups, and certainly that is one. Whatever your beliefs may be, I think that is a help in just your life in general. But mostly I read nonfiction, and as I told them at lunch today, I have about 21 books around where I sit, all with bookmarks in them, which means I haven't finished any of them. Sometimes I read novels that are really good, but I'm a fast reader, so I like to read newspapers, I like politics, I like to keep up with things like that in our community. And I find that interesting and challenging, and I want to know everything that's going on. I'm just curious.
Thank you again, Ms. Shepherd. My name is Randy Grooms, and I was sitting there listening to your story, and obviously leaders don't have perfect information, so you're there in the hospital, all the experts are telling you, leave your son here, you can't do it. What in you made you defy all of that expert advice and take your son to Denver? And what do you think would have happened had you not listened to yourself?
Well, in the first place, when we started in to start this hospital, we were very naive. We didn't have any expectation of how long we would be involved. We didn't even think about it. But we did know that we've never wavered in our commitment to do that, or we've never lost interest in the real goal, which is making sure that the Shepherd Center is the very best hospital of its kind in the world. And with our families coming from 64 different countries, we know that certainly the word is out there. I don't know, it just happens. I didn't set out to start this thing like this. It just grew, and we were absolutely centered on our goal, and we've never stopped. In fact, all of our meals at home have been talking about the hospital. We just talk about it all the time because we want to. And I think if you find something that interests you that much and you know is making a difference, and when they had your name on a building, you can't walk away. And so we were hooked up there for sure. There was not much turning back. And then as you get to see the patients change and grow and be able to be independent or living a life with meaning, you're just so happy for them, and you know that it's worthwhile, and you shouldn't turn back, and you shouldn't slack off, and you just keep going. So, it wasn't something as I said, opportunity falls on your shoulders. It just kind of drops down from heaven in weird places. And so we were steadfast in that and just never turned back. And, when James got hurt, we really didn't go to pieces. We said, we're going to do the best we can for him every day, and that's the most important thing, and it worked. We He's made great strides in his recovery, of course, and leading a meaningful life. And then as you age, as he's aged, he's gone from walking with a leg brace and a crutch to having a couple of back surgeries and shoulder surgeries as you wear out your shoulders. And he knew he would eventually be in a wheelchair, and he is now. But it's interesting, too, there's some other values and something I want to tell all of you. The children and grandchildren have had to find places to live that can be made accessible for his wheelchair or his crutch. That is really hard to find if you aren't building it from scratch. And the grandchildren have bought houses with 3 and 4 steps up to the front. So we had a landscape architect come and figure out how to make a gradual slope entrance to both of their houses. And now my granddaughter wants to move from Peachtree Corners back into town, and to find a place that she can make accessible is almost impossible. So think of your parents and grandparents, and as you find housing through your life, hope that it has a no-step entrance or can be easily ramped to have a no-step entrance, or they're not going to be able to visit you. And that is so important. If you're a builder or someone who is building a house, you can easily do that and have a no-step entrance someplace, because you're going to have friends that have a knee replacement or a hip replacement or just become infirm, and they need to be able to get into your house. We've worked so hard with Habitat for Humanity to say, those houses you're building are going to last at least 80 years, and they're going to have neighbors who have mobility problems. You may have them yourself, or your elderly parents may have mobility problems. And we had a terrible time convincing them, when it was possible, depending on the lay of the lot, to have no-step entrance, that this was a must. So we know we had some influence there, but you all can certainly do that as you live your lives. And if your parents and grandparents are making a change in the housing, they're downsizing or something, say, well, be sure that you can make a no-step entrance in the garage or the front or something. It really is going to be important. And then each one of you will be an agent for change, and change is important. And you look where there are curb cuts. When we first started, our board members would go around to shopping centers that were being built or redone and say, you don't have any curb cuts here. You've got to have them. Access for other people in the community with mobility problems. So each of you could do that, I know, as you go along.
So how do you recommend balancing emotions with business? So obviously you want to grow the Shepherd Center to help many people, and there's a lot of different ways of doing that. How do you balance kind of the heartfelt attempts while also making the best business decision as you go about that?
Well, I think the heartfelt attempt is going to be the right one. And we have a new venture coming. Our patients' families get to stay 30 days in our 83 apartments, or 84 apartments on campus, free of charge for the first 30 days their patient is there. And then when they go to day program, the patient moves in and the family comes back in with them. Well, we've found that our outcomes for the patients are much better if the families can be there more, and some of them are from far away. So we've just acquired a piece of property south of us across Collier Road where Ted's Montana Grill and Uncle somebody, Julio's, is. And we've got the whole property. We're going to build 104 more apartments so that people can stay the entire time that their patient is there. And again, this is free of charge to them. And it's such a help because people who come from other cities get to Atlanta and where are they going to stay? They're just lost. And to have these apartments right there and nearby is a great effort. And we think it's the right thing to do because 97% of our folks are discharged to their own community. About 3% end up in a nursing home or a SNF or something because they have no family, perhaps. Well, the more they understand about their injury, the family can support them better and things work better. We have great outcomes. And people are leading much more meaningful life if their family understands everything about the injury and has been able to be with them the entire time for support. That has really made a big difference. We also have a share military program for veterans who have slipped through the cracks, who have chronic headaches, who have PTSD, and who have concussion injuries. And they're down in a building a block away that Bernie Marcus bought for us. And so we can have 20 of these service veterans at a time, men as well as women. They stay in some condos we have nearby, and their family can stay if they still have a family. And this, again, is at no charge to them. We raise the money in the community. It's over $2 million a year. Not in the community. Actually, we raise this money nationwide because anybody who cares about the military or who was a veteran of some sort wants to contribute. And so we get funds from almost every state. And we're so glad that people want to make the veterans have a good recovery. We try to keep one bed open, or not a bed, but one position open in case somebody has gone to their community and feel like their PTSD is they're not handling it well. They need to come back for a refresher. So that happens, and that's great because they recognize and they're willing to say, hey, I'm really not doing so well, I need to come back. And I must say that we've treated over 800 of those. We've not had one suicide in the 2 to 3 months they stay with us. And every day, 22 are killing themselves across the country. We're very proud of that.
I think we are out of
All right,
time.
we are.
So thank you so much for being with us today. You are such inspiration, has set such a great example to all of us, and have been such an incredible blessing for our community, the city of Atlanta, the state, and beyond. We are honored that you spent the time with us today.
It's my honor.
And on behalf of the college, I've got a small token of our appreciation. Thank you.
Not necessary, but grateful. Thank you.
And I'm going to invite Keith Mason, the sponsor of this series, to the podium for some closing remarks. Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Lindsay Berman for what her role here in this program as one of our premier University of Georgia students. President Moorhead, Dean Ayers, thank you for presenting this lecture series today here at the University of Georgia. Just outside of here is our noted University of Georgia Arch, which stands for our mission, which is to teach, to serve, and to inquire into the nature of things. And our honored speaker here today personifies that more than anyone that we could have, and we want to thank her for what she's done here today. Moreover, the work that she has done along with members of her family and the staff at Shepherd Center, are changing lives physically, intellectually, and spiritually, as was demonstrated by her comments and presentation. But moreover, today, her presence and her remarks are helping change the lives of many of these young student leaders by planting these seeds of inspiration and service. And I want to thank her personally for being here and her remarks today and what she's doing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you both for your collaboration with the University of Georgia and your impact. We are so fortunate to be here today and for this lecture. This concludes our lecture of today, and you are all adjourned.